Hello and welcome to India Global Week 2020, Be the Revival, India and a Better New World. I'm your host, Priyanka Deo, reporting from New Delhi, India, and I'm super excited. We have registered attendees from over 50 countries. So this is truly India's global conference. We've had some amazing so far. We've been going all day. It's day one of the conference. We have 2 more days to go. Before we do that, we have an exciting panel coming up. The strategic partnership becomes the foundation of the India-US relationship. Will it fulfill India's energy needs as well as sustainable and inclusive development? Let's hear from our expert panel in this discussion, which we're just about to have: energy mission mode for security and diversity. Shots, if you are a part of the audience, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, please be sure to post them on social media using the hashtag #BeTheRevival. This session is sponsored by India Inc. and presented by the US Strategic Partnership Forum, or the USISPF. The US India Strategic Partnership Forum is a profit organization with the primary objective of strengthening the US India bilateral relationship. I now hand it over to the moderator, Mr. Nolty Theriot, Senior Vice President of the US India Strategic Partnership for this panel. Nolty, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Priyanka, and welcome everyone to today's session on energy collaboration. I think it's very timely that we have this session today. Collaboration in the space between the US and India has never been stronger. We've seen oil and gas, renewable energy, coal, hydrogen, opportunities have been increasing. Can you hear me? So, as I say, the opportunities in the energy space have been increasing dramatically, and we're honored to have such an experienced panel with us today, starting with Mahmoud Jardeaneh, the lead energy attaché from the U.S. Department of Energy. He's been a key interlocutor between the 2 governments and industry. We have Sujoy Ghosh, the head of First Solar in India. Sujoy is one of the leading experts in the renewable energy space, and solar, especially the solar space. And Robert Fee, Senior Vice President of International Affairs for Cheniere Energy. And as many of you know, Robert's one of the key stakeholders in the U.S. India LNG space, and Cheniere is one of the biggest success stories in the U.S. India energy, having one of the biggest deals completed between Cheniere and Gale, and I know Robert will talk about that a little later. So with that, I think we'll just dive right into the questions. Starting with, we'd love to get the panelists' thoughts on the future of energy collaboration in energy between the U.S. So MJ, if you want to kick it off, and then we'll move on to Sujoy and Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Nolty, and thanks to India Inc. for organizing this amazing event, and thanks for the U.S. India Strategic Partnership Forum for moderating this focused panel. As you know, energy cooperation is a centerpiece of the bilateral relationship, and it goes back for many years between the United States and India. Over the past few years, and particularly since 2017, our energy collaboration has witnessed an accelerated expansion with a pivotal role for energy trade, in addition to collaboration on technologies and the know-hows. For example, the U.S. export of oil to India has risen tenfold since 2017, from approximately 9 million barrels a day to approximately 93 million barrels last year, 2019. Similarly, U.S. exports of LNG, liquefied natural gas, and high-quality met coal continue to grow. We foresee our energy trade to continue to grow over the next decade and for the foreseeable future as well, offering India a diverse energy source, thus enhancing its energy security. Similarly, we are exploring collaboration in unconventional energy sources and advanced technologies that would supplement our expanding collaboration in the fossil energy sector. As we know, India is a net energy importer, and it has imported over 85% of its crude oil needs last year, and similarly imported over 50% of its natural gas needs last year. While renewables and coal, which are abundant in India, contribute to the energy mix, India will continue to rely on imports of oil and natural gas for the foreseeable future. The United States has become a net exporter of energy in the recent past, so it is just natural for the world's two largest democracies to partner in this area in order to complement each other's needs. It has been a positive story thus far, and we foresee the expansion of this collaboration across all subsectors well into the future.
Thanks, MJ. Sujoy, your thoughts on future collaboration opportunities in the renewable energy space?
Yeah, thanks, Nolty. I think as far as solar photovoltaics and generally renewable is concerned, the last decade witnessed a significant amount of capacity building in China, with China controlling about, globally today, about 40-45% of the annual demand for solar photovoltaics, but about 90-95% of the supply chain on solar. And as we've looked at in the recent past, the number 2 and the number 3 global market, the global demand drivers are coming from the US and India. And so collectively, we see an opportunity for these two countries to start collaborating and try to dispel this imbalance in terms of global supply demand, which perhaps would be more sustainable for the industry going forward. We have, opportunities for U.S. companies who are leading in cutting-edge technology, which can be commercialized and localized in India, as India looks at self-reliance on its supply chain for renewables and de-risking over dependence on one country. So the timing is right, the opportunity is there, the demand is there, and I think it's all positive from here on.
Great. No, I agree completely, Sujoy. That's good to hear. Robert, your thoughts on the natural gas LNG space?
Yeah, thank you, Nolty, and thank you to India Inc. for hosting this event and giving Cheniere the opportunity to talk about this important topic. I think MJ articulated it very well in terms of the mutual benefits to the natural partnership and energy between the U.S. and India. The U.S. becoming a larger and larger exporter, particularly in LNG, and India becoming a growing importer, again, also in LNG. I think about focus on Cheniere just quickly to show kind of an example of those mutual benefits. Cheniere entered into a 20-year long-term LNG sales and purchase agreement with GAIL in 2013. That contract helped Cheniere raise financing to build our facilities in Sabine Pass, Louisiana, an over $30 billion facility creating a lot of jobs in the United States. The contract began in March 2018, and in the 2 years, we've seen U.S. LNG flow to India because of that contract and because of market forces. So I think India's importers are benefiting from some of the unique characteristics of U.S. LNG, primarily the flexibility. I think you were going to talk about COVID at some point, but this year in particular has been a very challenging time for the oil and gas industry. The record low prices are actually a very good thing for India, as they've been able to enjoy those low prices. And so they've been able to kind of shift cargoes away from the U.S. and import from other places. So that flexibility is just one example of kind of the mutual benefits. So I think, this is a relationship on the LNG side that is just starting. And beyond LNG, there's a number of different areas from fossil to renewable that I think the growth and the, again, mutual benefits from the relationship are really incredible. So I believe the head of one of the strategic energy partnerships, someone noted that energy could become one of the bedrocks of the relationship, potentially over defense. And I think that's a very good way to view it. There's a lot of economic opportunity that comes from collaboration.
Thanks, Robert. No, I definitely think it will become the bedrock. Next question is related to the COVID-19 crisis. What are some of the lessons learned that energy stakeholders from industry and policymakers that they can use to make the sector more robust and sustainable, from supply chain lessons to, different areas in your spaces. MJ, do you want to lead off on that one?
Yeah, sure, Nolty. Yeah, there have been much learned actually from this unfortunate COVID-19 crisis, but probably I would mention two areas that really came to the forefront with regard to energy here in India, especially what I ended up dealing with myself during our discussions with industry members as well as policymakers over the past months. We have seen growing understanding and appreciation for the role of technology in the management of the energy sector. COVID has made utilities, especially in the electricity and city gas distribution segments, appreciate the role of technology that can play to maintain operations in areas such as metering, billing, and collections, while adhering to social distancing needs as we continue to encounter. It has also emphasized the role of smart meters that can play to improve the commercial aspects of operations, an area of constant struggle for the distribution companies. Additionally, the role technology can play for keeping the electricity grid ready for greater integration of renewable energy has been reinforced. Energy modeling for forecasting electricity demand, renewable power availability, and fuel demand has been another areas that has been appreciated over the past few months. While the challenges posed by COVID continue to unfold, there has been greater acceptance for these concepts of technology integration and energy modeling, which has been truly encouraging for us. And we hope our current collaborative initiatives with the National Institute for the Transformation of India, Niti Aayog, on the India Energy Modeling, under the India Energy Modeling Forum, and with the Minister of New and Renewable Energy on the South Asia Group for Energy, where the U.S. Department of Energy national labs play an important role. Hopefully they'll capture some of these requirements for India's energy sector. And also, as the COVID crisis and the sudden dip in energy demand highlighted the importance of flexibility in contracts. And here, as Robert just mentioned, I would like to highlight how the flexibility of the U.S. Liquefied natural gas export with no destination clause has enabled many of our partner nations, and same as India and many others that import U.S. LNG, to redirect these shipments without the need for renegotiations. Other exporters do not offer this flexibility that is allowed under contracts for importing natural gas from the United States. Yeah, these are the two things I wanted to highlight, Nolty, and probably the other panelists would have other areas to focus on.
Great, thanks, MJ. Sujoy, your thoughts?
The COVID crisis brought out a couple of things for the stakeholders in the renewable industry. One is de-risking of supply chain. I think both in solar and wind, we've been over-reliant on a very narrow set of geographical, a very narrow set of choices. And clearly that's been a challenge which confronted the industry and got people thinking on how do you de-risk your supply chain in some countries in terms of how do you self-reliance, in terms of reducing your dependence on imports and creating alternate supply chains which could access the local markets. And it's a great example of the Prime Minister's call for self-reliance in the country. The other thing, which COVID had highlighted was the need for grids to be more flexible, and that's because you saw a significant drop in demand, and then as the lockdown restrictions moved away, the demand started to pick up. But given the fact that now in a lot of these geographies, including India, solar energy and renewables generally are the cheapest source of energy on the grid. Therefore, making a case on the economics for deploying more and more renewables, I think it's building an equally compelling argument for hybridizing renewables with more flexible forms of generation, be it natural gas, be it electrochemical storage, be it hydro, and offering a different kind of product into the grid rather than these kind of long-term wholesale contracts. And I think that's where We see dispatchable renewables coming in, which will probably grow and mitigate some of these issues we have seen in a situation like COVID.
Robert, over to you.
Yeah, so I think, again, MJ did a very good job articulating the flexibility of US LNG that I think all of our customers, and particularly Gale and India, have enjoyed and has been really important during this tough time. And I think we've seen an incredible hit to demand from COVID. We also saw the resiliency of natural gas. And I think that goes to kind of what Sujoy was saying about both flexibility and then what I like to talk about of kind of a portfolio approach. One of the reasons why US LNG and India has been able to enjoy that flexibility, but also the low spot prices, is because they have a lot of long-term contracts that are oil linked. As their imports grow, they want to. India rightly, and Indian companies are thinking about what's the right portfolio of LNG contracts. It's no longer going to be dominated entirely by long-term point-to-point contracts. There's going to be growing medium-term and then also short-term. And I think that's a good approach. You need to have a portfolio of tenor, so length of contracts, different sources, different countries of supply, and that's also true for the energy system generally. Pursuing the all of the above approach, pairing gas with renewables, depending on what makes most sense locally, is really important. I mean, India, of course, is a massive country, and the Prime Minister's ambitious goal to increase electrification and increase the penetration of energy is noble, and it's going to be really difficult to accomplish, and it's going to take all different types of solutions that are both at the federal, state, and local levels. So you need to have that portfolio approach, and I think COVID has really shown the importance of that. So that again, specific to LNG, you're not when kind of market fluctuations happen, you're not paying over market prices. So you need that portfolio, but then also, so when prices rise, and they will, you're able to enjoy some of the benefits of having that lower cost long-term supply. So again, having a mix in your portfolio is really, really important.
That's exactly right. And India needs a multi-pronged approach. And on the flexible fuels, the U.S. government and MNRE, Ministry of Power, have a great flexible fuels initiative. That's another perfect example of successful collaboration with both industry and both governments. My next question is going to be for MJ. I know, MJ, you've been busy this past week with the upcoming strategic energy partnership between the U.S. and India, and next week Secretary Briette and Minister Pradhan will be meeting for the G2G dialogue on the 17th. I was hoping you can tell us a little bit about the SEP and what it means to the two countries and industry.
Sure. SCP, or the Strategic Energy Partnership, or as we refer to it, SCP in its acronym initials. So recognizing the importance of the energy cooperation between the US and India, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi announced elevating this relationship to the US to become the US-India Strategic Energy Partnership in 2017 during Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US. And it was formally launched in early 2018 when the U.S. Secretary of Energy visited India. The partnership is currently structured into 4 work streams or pillars that are co-chaired by cognizant organizations or ministries from both countries. These pillars or work streams include power and energy efficiency, oil and natural gas, renewable energy, and the 4th pillar is sustainable growth. Civil nuclear also remains an important component of our energy cooperation, and it informs the strategic energy partnership as well. This energy partnership between the two countries elevated the cooperation to the highest levels in order to enhance the energy security, expand innovation, bolster our strategic alignment, and facilitate industry, most importantly, facilitate industry and stakeholders engagement from both of our countries. As Nolty mentioned, we are in the midst of the annual Strategic Energy Partnership Ministerial, which will take place next week. So by next Friday, when the meeting takes place, we would have had 10 industry-focused events and 5 government-to-government events in the 3 weeks leading up to the ministerial. And this panel could not have been timelier, as it will inform industry and participants over the bilateral energy cooperation between the two nations. So hopefully many of you will join us in some of these industry events in the lead up to the ministerial next week. So it's been elevated and it's at the highest level. It gets all the attention, even all the way up to our Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of India and the US President. With this, back to you, Nolty. Hopefully this was a good, very high-level highlight about the Strategic Energy Partnership.
It was, MJ. And one follow-up question. Under the SEP is the US India Gas Task Force that's been very successful. I was wondering if you can maybe highlight some of the progress that the GTF has made and tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So the U.S. India Gas Task Force is an industry-focused forum that is co-chaired by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Indian Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. The task force identifies innovative policy reforms to support India's ambitions to transition to a natural gas economy. Members of under the various subcommittees, industry members under the subcommittees of the task force identify focus areas that would help in natural gas demand growth in the infrastructure development, as well as market and regulatory reforms. So under the Gas Task Force, members were able to initiate several joint agreements related to new natural gas demand, as well as infrastructure development. Also, the Gas Task Force facilitated new partnerships between the natural gas regulators in both countries. There are several deliverables will be announced in the upcoming ministerials. I do not want to go ahead and announce them before the minister and the secretary get to announce that. So hopefully by next Friday, we'll have a joint statement with a lengthy list of deliverables, and there are several other deliverables of commercial nature negotiations between U.S. and Indian companies. So it has been a bright side under the oil and gas pillar of the Strategic Energy Partnership, working on this gas task force, as it's an industry focus where we feel industry has a major role in actually forming this sector and this cooperation.
Thanks, MJ. You know, as one of the industry co-chairs, one of the subcommittees, you know, I think this platform has been very helpful to industry, you know, increasing collaboration between U.S. and Indian industry, especially working with some of the big Indian oil and gas PSUs. And we're very excited about the announcements next week. Are there other areas that you see, other collaboration areas in the space that that have potential in the future, whether it be hydrogen or other areas?
Sure. As you know, there's a lot of ongoing cooperation initiatives between the Department of Energy and the broader U.S. government with partners here in India. We're working closely with several ministries and industry and a nonprofit organization and trade organization like yours here in India. Going forward, I mean, definitely we will continue to work with India on diversifying its energy sources and achieving its energy security. But we're also exploring new areas for cooperation in advancing clean coal power technology, which will allow India to continue using its vast resources of coal while reducing the harmful emissions. We are also looking forward to starting a new cooperation in hydrogen production and technology. So stay tuned for an announcement. Will be taking place later next week, and it would be an industry-led initiative. Also, we're working on industrial energy efficiency with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency here in India. We're exploring areas for working on carbon capture and utilization, as well as the strategic petroleum reserves, among many other areas that we're working on.
Great, thanks, MJ. This would be a good segue to move on to Robert. You know, Robert, Cheniere has been a stakeholder in the Gas Task Force, and you know, would love to get your opinion on where do you see the future for natural gas in India, and how can we help India meet the Prime Minister's goal of 15% natural gas use in the energy mix?
Yeah. Well, first of all, so thank you to MJ, and then also to Minister Pradhan and Secretary Brulette for elevating the strategic energy partnership and the natural gas task force. We believe it's a very useful engagement, and it really helps focus on the critical issues. And I think those critical issues are policy and regulatory and infrastructure issues in India. India has made incredible strides in the past few years on their infrastructure challenge, as I talked about kind of earlier. Just the size and the breadth of the country, makes building out that infrastructure very difficult, particularly for LNG. You bring it to the coast. How do you get it into the middle of the country? So, not only the investment in the infrastructure, but then also working on the right policies and regulations that will encourage natural gas demand and other energy sources, increase the competitiveness of those resources, and then also liberalize pricing, again, for competitiveness purposes. I mean, you want to get affordable, reliable energy supplies. That's the goal of every country, and it's not there's no silver bullet. There's many things, and they have to be done at the federal, state, and local level. So I think the SCP's focus on policy and regulatory issues is the right one. You need industry to be involved in that. We are often on the ground and are able to identify certain issues, but government's role is really trying to create the ecosystem, or I would say that government's role in both of our two democracies is to kind of unleash and create the market conditions that let commercial enterprises, do their business, right? So, we don't need help matchmaking or having discussions with our counterparties for commercial deals. I mean, those have to happen along commercial terms that work for both parties and for both countries. But creating the ecosystem and the policies and regulations, that's the bedrock that unleashes the energy potential. So I think that's the right focus. I think the potential is really, incredible. For us, India is one of those critical markets that we spend a lot of time thinking about and visiting, and it's because there's so much potential, not just on LNG, but for all energy sources when you think about kind of demand growth potential. And I should also note, this is the key area where you have the challenge that, again, all countries are facing is how do you increase and how do you meet growing energy demand and do so while mitigating or lowering both carbon emissions, but also traditional air pollutants. And that is a very difficult question. The world has rising energy demand, and we need to figure out how to do that in a more low carbon manner. LNG is one way that you kind of helps get a chunk of that, but it's also up to industry for us to improve our profile so that downstream our customers benefits. So I think it's a massive challenge. I think India is doing an incredible job. It all starts with the top. I mean, Prime Minister Modi's leadership, the target from 6 to 15%, that is required to then kind of engage government at all levels and on both sides to really think about how do you create the policies and regulations to help meet that goal.
I agree completely, and I just want to commend DOE and the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas and the officials at PNGRB and FERC for all the hard work. We're starting to reap the benefits of the GTF and seeing the progress being made on the policy, on the regulatory side. Some of the pilot projects and commercial deals that have been coming out, it's really, I think, benefited both countries. MJ, if I could jump right back to you on coal. I know DOE's launched some new initiatives, and Secretary Briette, when we hosted the Secretary and Minister Pradhan, they both said there's a lot of opportunity for the two countries in the coal space. I was wondering if you could maybe highlight some of those opportunities and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure, Nolty. Yes, the U.S., especially the Department of Energy, really our focus does not go into the mining sector, which has been recently reformed, and we see hopefully there's a potential for the U.S. private sector to engage in India's mining sector, whether it's in mining directly or equipment and the so on support services. But the Department of Energy mainly is focused on coal technologies. So there's a recently launched initiative about in the past year or so. It's something called we call it the Department of Energy, or we announced it. It's called the Coal First, and it focuses on developing the coal technology of this century, the coal technology that would have zero emissions, the coal technology that would allow us to continue to use coal for the foreseeable future, and the technology that would allow India to continue to be dependent on coal using the new technology. As our Assistant Secretary Steve Winberg yesterday highlighted, he leads that initiative from the department under the Secretary's direction. He highlighted to India the interest in working with India in this area, and we will be reaching out to the Ministry of Power. We already briefed them at very high level on it, but we will be engaging with them directly to see if there's areas to do that research and development in collaboration with our Indian partners here. As well, we see a big role for the U.S. Industry to participate in this initiative. Will be, I don't know the specifics of it, but I assume the U.S. Department of Energy, national laboratories, as well as industry would be bidding on these grants that will be coming out to do the research and development in this area. So hopefully this is a new area we'll be looking into working with India on, and I believe it's an area that really would be of interest for both of our nations.
I agree. That'll be a great opportunity. So if we can switch gears now and move on to the renewable energy space, Sujoy, what are some of the concrete steps that the Indian government can take, to help the U.S. renewable players, both generators and the manufacturers, enter and expand into the India market?
So I think let me break that into two parts. One is U.S. energy generators who are already in the Indian market. You've got companies who are U.S. origin companies who are participating in the renewable energy development space in India. But perhaps, Nolty, the reason why we don't see a lot more U.S. companies coming in is because there is a very strong domestic market in the U.S. And also given the investment tax credit and the production tax credit incentive policy, which is there in the U.S. For U.S.-based developers, the U.S. home market offers perhaps a pretty compelling economic opportunity, as compared to India. But we still see, some developers making the transition, developing projects in India. But when you look at your fully hedged, risk-adjusted returns in dollar terms, given all the issues around currency and devaluation and all of those things, combined with the risks we see in counterparty and enforceability of contracts, we've seen U.S. origin companies really focus on their home market, in the renewable space as a developer. But when it comes to technology, it's a completely different discussion, right? I mean, in terms of we've seen, companies, whether it's in wind, solar photovoltaics, and in electrochemical storage, there is a significant amount of U.S. technology companies who are already participating in the Indian market and who intend to participate in the Indian market, just given the scale and the size of the opportunity which India represents. Perhaps the only challenge we see is, unlike a lot of markets and unlike US, the Indian market's very, very fixated on initial installed cost as opposed to a complete life cycle cost. And usually when you do that, especially in technologies which are very commoditized, you would tend to then look at very short-term technology choices, and U.S. technologies in general, and across the energy spectrum, whether you look at conventional power or you look at renewables, do offer a more competitive solution when you look at it on a life cycle basis, in terms of long-term reliability, in terms of sustainability, in terms of circularity of supply chain, and all of those things. And I think it's time, as India looks at creating alternatives to their current overdependence on China and looks at creating self-reliance, in order to make the right technology choices, the framework of evaluation needs to shift from initial installed cost per kilowatt or cost per megawatt to really looking at life cycle cost per megawatt hour over the operating life of the asset. And once you do that, you're in the right framework for making those evaluations. The other thing I would say is, going back to my earlier point around flexible grids, I think there's a lot of learning in the U.S. As there's been a deployment of electrochemical storage and hybrid renewables. There's a lot of learning on how contracts need to be structured, how the technologies need to be selected, where is the risk between the consumer and the plant operator in terms of usage. And some of that learning needs to come into the Indian system as India looks at its own flexible grid program. I think the whole flexible resources initiative, which was led by the State Department with LBNL, is a good example of sharing best practices, but perhaps that needs to be accelerated and moved into pilot implementation mode very quickly. Otherwise, you might end up setting up the market in a different way, and then kind of losing out the opportunity to really do the right thing and get the right technologies at play into the market.
Thanks, Sujoy. Quick follow-up question: how can U.S. companies, multinational companies, take advantage of some of the Honorable Prime Minister's new initiatives, like the self-reliant India or Make in India initiatives? What's your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think, as I said in my opening statement, that this is a great opportunity. The next decade, the current decade, the 2020s, is a great opportunity for U.S. and India to collaborate on technology, because if you combine the demand of India and U.S. in terms of renewable energy, it's perhaps equal to, if not greater than, what the market opportunity that China presents to the world. And so, it's time for this collaboration to happen. I think there are a lot of U.S. companies who are interested to invest in creating supply chain in India and creating jobs across both the countries. Likewise, there is a lot of Indian companies who are looking to the U.S. for exporting of certain components to also services. I mean, India is perhaps the lowest cost capex market for renewables, both in solar and wind, and the amount of let's say the cost competitiveness which the Indian renewable industry has achieved, especially around balance of system, grid integration, some of the services, is phenomenal. And I think that then presents an opportunity for Indian companies to go and look at business in the U.S. and make renewables more affordable. So I think there's a very, very healthy opportunity on either side for companies to tap. And I think there are discussions happening between private sector companies as we speak on potential opportunities to collaborate, in this space.
Oh no, I definitely agree with you, Sujoy. We've started to see more of our members, Indian companies, investing in the U.S. and starting new tie-ups across the energy space.
I think, Nolty, just for me to add one thing, I think there should be a system or a mechanism of preferred market access between U.S. and India, and I think that would perhaps accelerate this technology cooperation. as opposed to both countries putting up kind of barriers in terms of market access, both tariff and non-tariff barriers, which currently are in force in both countries. Perhaps there could be a case for India and US to sit as part of this whole energy dialogue to look at how do you do a preferred market access between the two countries for free and fair exchange of technology and services.
I couldn't agree with you more. The tariff and non-tariff barriers are not helping. With that being said, that wraps up our Q&A session. I just want to give each of you one last chance to make some closing remarks. Robert, if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, sure. I'll just keep it very brief and say, again, thank you to India Inc. for hosting this event and for the opportunity to be here. And, I think for us to continue to grow the U.S.-India energy relationship, there's a lot of work to be done, and that has to be done with governments, and it has to be done with policymakers, and it has to be kind of bipartisan and across the administration. And I've, confidence on the U.S. side that is the case. So, we look forward to continuing to grow our relationship in India, to invest in India, and hopefully, continue to see that energy be the bedrock of the relationship.
MJ, over to you. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, sure. As I articulated, the United States sees this energy partnership as a centerpiece of our bilateral relationship. The government-to-government component of the relationship is really thriving, and similarly is industry cooperation in the sector. As Robert just mentioned, there remain challenges pertaining to ease of doing business and harmonization of regulations and other areas, but working together as governments and engaging industry in the discussion would definitely help us overcome some of these challenges to take the cooperation to the next level. An energy secure India is in the interest of the United States, and working together, we will achieve energy security and prosperity for both of our nations. Thank you very much for hosting this session. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to continuing this dialogue.
Thanks, MJ. Sujoy, any last remarks?
No, from our perspective, India, we've been in India the last 8 years. We continue to partner with Indian companies providing our technology and are fully committed to decarbonizing the energy space in India, and look forward for a very sunny and bright future for renewables in both countries.
Thanks, Sujoy. I want to thank the three of you. It's been a pleasure working with you over the years, and appreciate your insights today. I agree, we have a great opportunity right now. The U.S. India Energy Cooperation can be the bedrock, and look forward to working with you closely, and hopefully we'll get some good news from the SCP next week and have some new initiatives to work on and build the relationship even stronger. So with that, just concludes our session today. Thank you all for joining, and want to thank India Inc. for organizing the program. Have a good evening, good day. Take care.